So now it's time to start installing our XtremIO brick. So the first thing that we need to do is to connect to the tech interface. So I'm going to cheat. I talked about this in the slides, but normally you connect a notebook right to the back of the interfaces on the controllers. Well, I'm doing this from a remote lab. I don't think you want to try to listen to me talk over the whirring fans of a data center. So the way I'm doing it is I've actually got the tech interfaces plugged into a switch in the lab, and I'm just going to shut down the port. So I'll have one live, one shut down. Then when we're ready to do the next controller, I'll just flip those. So with that, we'll need to go ahead and connect into the interfaces. So I'm on a remote desktop here. I'm not going to get into the details why, but I have an odd condition in the lab that doesn't let me get to the tech interfaces from my main virtual desktop. So I've got this one here, which will be kind of a window in a window for a minute. So I'll open PuTTY. I have this profile built in. Remember, here's the IP of our tech. So 169.254.254.1. And this will be the same on each one. So we'll go ahead and we're going to log in as xinstall. Again, the password here is xiofast1, and we're going to get our menu. So if we look at the configuration by hitting number 4, we'll see that everything is blank. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to do number 2, which is configuration. So first it wants a system name. So you're going to need to remember this name, so make it something memorable. I'm going to do XtremIO Charlotte Lab. Then it says, what is your brick number? So I only have one brick in the lab, but you may have multiple in your environment. So it's going to say the brick on the bottom of the rack starts at 1, and then they go up to 16. The brick doesn't know he's on the bottom, or he doesn't know he's on the top. This is more about you knowing which one is configured as brick 1, brick 2, and brick 3. So I just have 1. And then it says, okay, which storage controller are we currently configuring? So it says, again, start at 1 at the bottom and work your way up. I guess each brick only has 2. So it'll be the bottom one will be 1, the top one will be 2. And again, they don't know where they're at. This is for your benefit. So he is number 1. Then it says, give me your management IP address. So I have 10.2.16.100 for him, netmask, and gateway. Then it wants to know the IPMI lights out. So again, we've talked about this. You'll have remote access to the servers or the controllers if you need to. So for him, I have 102. And the netmask. And the gateway, 16.1. So it'll go through, it'll check all of its configurations. If you assign an IP address that's already in use, it'll tell you that there's a conflict. It'll tell you if there's any other problems. This is pretty handy in case you accidentally give both controllers the same IP address. So now that we're done, he's going to make sure we're good. Are we sure? Yes. It assigns all that stuff and configures the controller. So now if we hit number 4, he's going to pop up and say, here's your configuration, here's our name, our system ID, brick number, controller number, management IP, netmask, and gateway, IPMI, IP, netmask, and gateway. These two IB0 and IB1 IPs, those are for the back-end InfiniBand ports. So if you remember, when you have a single brick, they cross-connect controller to controller. If you have multiple bricks, then you run through an InfiniBand switch, but this is the IPs. We'll see other IPs when we configure controller number 2. I believe they're actually .17 and .18, but those what your addresses are. So when you're done, hit 99 to exit, and it'll kick you out. So here's something that I have to do, which is I have to reboot this guy. And the reason for that is I reset these things from my lab. I've noticed sometimes when I do the reset and IP them, that, and the reason I'll show you this in case for some reason you hit it, is 10.2.16.100. See, it gives you connection refused. For some reason, SSH isn't started properly. So if you pull XtremIO out of the box and run into this problem, what I suggest is after you configure the IP, you try to SSH into the management IP that you gave it. If it does a refused, like mine just did, just reboot the box. So go back into the tech interface, shutdown-R now. It's a Linux command, says shutdown, do a reboot, and do it right now. And we'll go ahead and do that. So while that one is rebooting, we will switch over to the other guy. So I'm going to shut down that interface. Go back over to this interface, and do a no shut. Remember, this is because I am not directly connecting a notebook like you're supposed to do. So give that a second, and then we'll go back to, again, the same IP address. It may take a minute to retry because that port has to come up. There we go. It's going to complain because my key is, this is actually good. If you do something like this, like you want to keep your tech interfaces plugged in, PuTTY is going to complain because the RSA key fingerprint on one controller is different than the other one, so it's going to yell at you. I just say yes because I know which ones they are. And again, we log in as xinstall, xiofast1, and we do the same thing that we just did. So to make sure we don't have any config on this box, we do not. We'll go ahead and do 2. Enter the system name. It needs to be the same as what you just entered a minute ago. XtremIO Charlotte Lab. I don't know if it's case sensitive. I don't want to find out, so I always make sure it matches. Then brick number is the same. This is the second controller in the first brick, but my controller number is now 2. First one was 1. This one's on top, so he will be 2. And then it wants the management stuff again. This one's .101. About to give it my home lab IP address, 16.1 for gateway. IPMI is 10.2.16.103. And there's a net mask. And there is the gateway again. So it's going to cross-check everything once again. And actually, I'll give you a little bit of a piece of advice. If you did reboot the first controller, like I just did, I would wait a minute before setting this one up, because when it does its checks here, if that other box isn't up, an IP conflict may not show up. But I'm pretty sure I got that right, so off we go. We'll do 99 to, actually, let's make sure it took it. So XtremIO Charlotte Lab, brick number 0, or brick number 1, controller 2, management IP is 101, IPMI IP is 103. Gateways are right. Here's your InfiniBand ports. I mentioned they'd probably be 17 and 18, and they are. So we will exit, and then again I have to reboot. And to reboot, you log in as root, and the password for that is 123456. What's interesting is you'll find, if we look at this, might as well while I'm standing here. If we look at the password file, like install or xinstall actually calls the install CLI as your shell script. So if you're not used to looking at the password file under Linux, here's your username, and this is actually your shell down here that you normally run when you log in. So he'll get install CLI. But if we go up and look at, say, let's see if I can learn to scroll, root, he just runs normal bash. So you'll see different accounts on these boxes, and within the XMS management server, a lot of times those accounts just call a script. They automatically pop up a menu for you. So that works pretty well. So we'll just go ahead, down, and reboot that guy. So at this point, I'm going to give them a few minutes to reboot and make sure that they can talk. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and install the XMS server.